Hi, everybody. My name is Justin Weiss. I'm the Director General of the Paris Peace Forum, and I also happen to be the moderator for this session because I take personal interest in critical minerals, what we are slowly calling transition minerals, because it's more adapted to what we are talking about really, and then the idea that some are critical is of course subject to discussion. So I will be moderating this session with great guests. I will introduce them in a minute, but first let me tell you why we started working more or less 2 years ago on critical minerals. We all know that over the next 30 years, we need to extract more minerals than have ever been extracted since the beginning of mankind, in order, in particular, to achieve carbon neutrality within the time frame laid out by the Paris Agreement. So we're talking about massive extraction and transformation with all the attendant problems to that. Of course, we know that these problems are probably better than the problem of global warming that was linked to the sort of previous economy. But obviously, the big question for anyone who cares about global governance is how do we not reproduce all the problems that we had with oil and gas, the exacerbated geopolitical competition that it led to, the environmental problems that it caused, the social problems that it caused, the political effect that it had on political regimes, etc. More importantly, how do we ensure that disputes, competition around critical minerals will not get in the way of producing more, and that we are not getting to a suboptimal level of production. So we started working on this with this idea of global governance very much in mind, and we noticed very rapidly that among all the problems that are before us, very few of them were actually tackled from a planetary perspective, if you'd like. That is from the collective interest point of view rather than the point of view of some countries. And so we initiated this project on critical minerals in order to try and see what we could do in terms of norms, in terms of recommendations, in terms of also coalition of actors to tackle that issue and make sure that we will not only be able to ensure sufficient transition minerals, but also do it in a socially, environmentally, and I would say geopolitically good way. Last note, before I get to the speakers, you know that this year the slogan of the 6th edition of the Paris Peace Forum is seeking common ground in a world of rivalry. And obviously, critical minerals or transition minerals is a very good example of that. How do we avoid that exacerbated geopolitical competition leads to an inability to cooperate or even coordinate? Remember, for example, in February when a Chinese balloon flew over the US territory for almost 2 months, as John Kerry said, he was not able, the climate negotiator for the US, was not able to make progress or to discuss with his Chinese counterparts. So we see very clearly how geopolitics can block or slow down or even make impossible global governance. And we see how competition is sort of eating up at coordination and cooperation. So what we will explore with my co-panelists is how we can do better than the era of oil and gas, and I would say rapidly so, because it's a problem very much for today, and what ways can be found and what principles should be followed to do that. So in order to discuss these issues, I have a great panel, I must say, with 4 speakers. Mr. Miyanaga-san is the chair of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and director of Mitsubishi Corporation. I think you have spent pretty much your whole career at Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and Chairman Miyanaga-san is a member of our Transition Minerals Initiative and a signatory of our call to action. Immediately on my left, Agi Veres is the director of the Geneva Representation Office of UNDP. Everybody knows about PNUD. Obviously, you took your job in September 2021, and previously you worked at the Regional Bureau for Europe and the Commonwealth in Istanbul. You were country director, then resident representative of UNDP in China. And obviously, China is very important in all of these issues, which leads me to introduce our guest, our remote guest, whom I had the pleasure to talk with and work with when he came for the OECD meeting in the spring here. Li Hui Sun is the founder and chairman of the Responsible Critical Mineral Initiative and the director of the development department of CCCMC, the China Chamber of Commerce of Metals, Minerals, and Chemical Importers and Exporters. Thank you for being with us remotely. I know you wished to come to Paris, but it was not possible, so we're really glad that you could join us remotely. And last but not least, His Excellency Minister Amon Murwira. You are the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development of Zimbabwe. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for being with us. You were appointed in 2007. You're also an academic at the Department of Geography and Environmental Science at the University of Zimbabwe. And as many of you, because I see in the room many specialists of the question, know, Zimbabwe is an important exporter of platinum. Very much used in electronics, like probably the phone you have in your pocket, and lithium. We all know about lithium. Zimbabwe's government banned raw lithium exports in December 2022 to encourage local processing and discourage informal artisanal mining. So we'll basically have two sessions, and I will start with the speakers. One on how geopolitical competition is affecting our collective capacity to reach net zero by having sufficient raw materials, and the second one on market disruptors, what their impacts are, etc. Agi, let me start with you. In your view, the concept of critical minerals used by many consumer states reveal the sort of current mindset of competition around these resources. How much of that is true, and why should we care?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Maybe just I take 1 minute just to take a step back on looking at the big picture and how the issue of transitional or critical minerals fit in there. I don't think I have to repeat, and we heard it repeatedly even today, on the multiple crises that we are facing today, and in terms of social, economic, the conflicts around the world, and so forth. But when we're looking at this context and we're looking around the tensions, it's very important to understand that addressing these tensions, it's not happening in an isolation from one of each other. Because what happens is that in reality now we're facing a situation that's really unprecedented, especially in our lifetimes, or what we can remember since the Great Wars, in the sense that, for example, looking at just simply human development. For the first time in 2 years, human development, according to our Human Development Index that UNDP publishes, it's falling everywhere. So it's not just in a couple of places. It's not in sub-Saharan Africa. It's everywhere. It's the whole set. We're looking at the climate crisis. It's affecting everybody. So we have this kind of connected multi-crisis that cannot be addressed by itself. So when we're looking at countries' commitment to achieve the net zero emissions, and as digital technologies take more prominence, essentially we're trying to advance the response to the climate crisis. We're trying to transfer to renewable energies. And what we're seeing is we're not reaching it, and there are many reasons for it. But I want to emphasize the reason that is connected to the social and economic issues. Because when we are transferring to, or we were trying to put climate actions in place, essentially what we're finding, a lot of it is paid by the lower end of the society. Essentially, by large, the poor is supposed to be paying the cost of it. So that means societies are pushing back. And they're pushing back everywhere, not just in developing countries. So as a consequence, short-term political actions and governments are backpedaling on the climate actions because of the pushback of the societies. So when we look at specifically on the countries or on the issue of the minerals, because of the drive to achieve the net zero emissions and the digital technologies, the demand for the minerals and metals will only surge. So the pace of growth in demand is expected to largely outweigh the supply capacity, I mean, due to a number of reasons, including the sluggish supply responses and that the geopolitical tensions that you also mentioned. So there is basically a set of minerals and metals that are components in these renewable technologies. Without that, we cannot achieve the transition to these technologies. And what it means is that there is a rush and for control for these minerals that is kind of fitting into the geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, into a different kind of trade war and control over these resources. Not so different, actually, from previous resource constraints that we had with oil and other resources. At the same time, I think the big difference is also that the producing countries or a large part of the critical minerals are concentrated in developing countries and areas that have overlapping risk profiles. So they have commodity dependence, fragility, corruption, climate impacted by biodiversity hotspots, and a lot on indigenous people's lands. So that means that when we have this increased demand for minerals, it has two aspects to it. On one side, it presents a great opportunity for economic growth that can advance the human well-being. But on the other side, given the context where these areas are, there's a huge risk to human rights, environmental degradation, governance risk, and the impacts of it. So, there are growing concerns from developing countries, not just on the issues on the surface, which is about exploitation of land and human resources and environmental degradation, but really about taking control of the benefits that are not translating into their local economies. So, in terms of how we address that and what we can do, just the most important aspect is a just energy transition, which means both meeting current and future demands for these minerals and doing so in a way that supports the inclusive growth, that protects the nature and human rights across the supply chains where we're seeing this. Because failing so can lead to the backlash that delays this transition, the backlash that actually furthers polarization, increases socio-environmental protests and conflicts, and essentially undermines the development. And consequently, in many places, what we see is instead of the opportunities being harnessed, we're seeing development failures that could lead to conflicts and humanitarian situations, let alone the fall in human development status.
Thank you. Mr. Sun, let me turn to you. Without a bad joke, China looms large over this debate. And obviously, we are very glad from the start to have included our Chinese colleagues in these discussions, because they cannot happen in a meaningful way if we're talking about global governance without China, which is a big actor. So what I heard from Aggie was that what was critical was to rethink the way we develop the production of critical minerals. My question would be, what international mechanisms do you think are missing to sort of improve and rethink mineral governance and use and promote more global cooperation on the issue?
好的，感谢主持人。
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I apologize for not joining you physically, because actually the potential trip to Paris conflict with my other business, because as we know, the whole world is dealing with the climate change and the energy transition is required, and we are changing from the change to the energy-intensive world, and actually our demand for critical minerals increased very rapidly. So we can see there are many standards for the minerals for the supply chain, but actually we lack of mutual recognition of the standards. There are a lot of audits for the supply chain, but we lack of the action in governing the origin of the mineral supply chain. There are many NGOs who advocate this or that, but we lack of an organization which provide the services of the capacity building for enterprises. And there are many dialogue platforms, but they lack of the comprehensive measures to address the true problems. There are pressures, but there is no partnership among the up, mid, and downstream. So I believe in order to address all these issues, we need the dialogue and the mutual trust, which serves as a key and foundation of addressing all these problems. So we need to build mutual trust among the resource countries, the producing countries, and the consuming countries. We need to consider the concerns from different stakeholders and build such a mutually beneficial partnerships. So I have several suggestions. First, we need to set up a cooperation platform with the voluntary sustainable standards for the global mineral supply chain. And with the UNGP, the Tripartite Declaration, and OECD as a basis, we can improve the consistency of all these standards. And also we need to emphasize the global south eco-opportunity and eco-say, so we can start the mutual recognition and cooperation among standards. Secondly, I think though we already got the RCI, GBA, and RMI initiatives, but I think the up, mid, and downstream enterprises are not fully represented. I think we need to rebuild or expand the cooperation platform, which integrate the up, mid, and downstream. And we also encourage the downstream brands to take part in it. And thirdly, the global development aid funds supported a lot of academia, NGOs, and foundations to advocate the policy, but there are few of them which can provide the capacity building service for businesses. We hope more aid funds would be invested into the capacity building of enterprises. And the fourth one is a UNGP encourage the business and the industries to set up the grievance mechanisms so that they could start the mediation for all the stakeholders. But currently, we still lack of a widely accepted grievance mechanism. We developed the grievance mechanism for the mining sector and the mineral value chain with the expectation to fill up this gap. The Paris Peace Forum organized this meeting and to gather all the industry, businesses, academia, and government together. I think this is a very good cooperation platform. We hope we could emphasize the eco-say and eco-dialogue so that we could address all these issues as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I get to Minister Amon, especially on this question of the mutually beneficial partnership and the relationship between consumer and producer countries, let me turn to you, Chairman Miyanaga. Could you tell us more about concretely how does the competition around minerals affect your industry in your day-to-day work?
Oh, our industries, which is supporting the providing the technology for the energy transitions, like the hydrogen use gas turbines and sometimes the hydrogen usage and even the nuclear power, and also the even in case of the natural gas firing, we are providing the carbon capture system, carbon dioxide gas capture system. And from the viewpoint of that kind of technology provider, the critical mineral issues we recognize this issue may complicate the approach or the more variety of the resulting in the more varied approaches or pathways to the net zero emission, utilizing in some countries, the more hydrogen concentrated, in some countries, more nuclear power, which may produce hydrogen too, and in other words, the mixture of the hydrogen use and ammonium use, and the ammonia combustion is being developed, and so on. And the carbon capture system itself is developing and evolving very rapidly recently because of this kind of critical mineral issues and others. So some countries are very much concerned when or if we face the insufficient supply of the critical mineral-based the advanced devices and so on. So there will be such kind of the multiple issues, and also we need to constantly accelerate more technological innovations to reduce the emission, the carbon dioxide emissions, or the saving energies use, and then another kind of the transition technologies, defining this might be the transition technologies for a while, and this are a little longer technologies, and some materials may be treated as a very good transition materials, not for the primary use for the most advanced saving energy or the EV used batteries and so on, but for other a little bit second grade usage, it might be very convenient. So as a technology provider and supplier, equipment supplier, we are now diversifying our approaches, but at the same time, we would like to focus on or some prioritize the technologies, and this is the most important one. This is the second and third. Such kind of put the priorities or the importances. It's very important, now becoming more important, more necessary. That is the current situation. And we would like to pursue that kind of some selective or the prioritized approaches, and would like to share by all the people or all the enterprises and all over the world such kind of information. To what extent we have reached, to what extent we are successful in the laboratory experiment, but as a commercial plant, we need some pilot stage and so on. But such kind of information sharing is becoming much more important now. That is my feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, a very, very important lead indeed. Minister Amon, I mentioned Zimbabwe's recent initiatives. How do you think consumer and producer countries better work together to get to that famous responsible mineral supply chain that we are all looking for?
Oh, thank you very much. We are very pleased to have been invited here. I think I would start by basically saying we start with the question, how do we want to run our world? What is the model that we want to use to run our world? Because we are talking about geopolitical tensions. What causes this? It is the model we are using to run our world, of them and us. We have got different endowments in the world, and those endowments may be oil, let's talk about lithium, let's talk about platinum, and so forth. They occur in a disaggregated manner, and they should be a source of trade, not a source of tension. So it's a choice between might and trade or grab and trade. So what basically that means is that we have to choose a policy which enables us to work as a human community together. When it comes to Zimbabwe, I want to tell you that by any survey, Zimbabwe has one of the highest concentrations of any kind of mineral, including these critical minerals that we are talking about. So how do we coin our relations in terms of trade and in terms of exploitation of our minerals? Zimbabwe has a very simple foreign policy. It might not be simple, but let me call it simple. A friend to all and an enemy to none. We don't manufacture enemies. What that means is people who want to come and work with us on the exploitation and development of our minerals, we would work with them without putting a color on them. But by looking at whether it's of interest to Zimbabwe and whether it benefits our counterpart who will be working with us. So the issue basically is that we have the minerals, plenty, a lot of them. We don't know what we don't have. In other words, we're saying there's so much plenty that we don't know what we don't have. The list that we don't have might be smaller. The list that we have is bigger. That's what I'm trying to say. But the whole issue is about the philosophy. How do you want to run the world? Do you want to run the world by categorizing people that I work with you, I don't work with you? No, we run the world based on the fairness, trade versus might, plunder versus trade. So basically, this is the way we look at it, because all these geopolitical tensions are caused by categorization. This one bad, this one good, and so forth. So what we are saying is Zimbabwe, friend to all, enemy to none. You want to do business with us? Let's come and work. And let's go for it. And we don't want to be categorized that we belong to that group and that group. We belong to the human family, and it's a philosophical issue that causes tensions. Because you can't grab all yourself. You can't have it all yourself. One. No. It's for the human family. It's like oxygen. So we have to look at the way we look at how we run the world. This is how I want to tackle this question, to say what model are you using? What is causing tension? What is making this one versus that one? What are you fighting for? So the model that we use to run this world in the 19th century, in the 20th century, must change in the 21st century, whereby not certain countries are then called you and them, because we both need the minerals. So it's not like I provide, you take. It's about we work on the minerals ourselves, together with the ones who call themselves them and the ones who call themselves us. So together we do it. So to me and to us, this is the basis of Zimbabwe, even foreign policy. Friend to all, enemy to none. Come and work with us, and we will be able to use the minerals for the good of the world. But if you come with them and us, then we will not be able to tackle this world of tensions. I'll stop here for now.
Thank you very much. That was a very very, very, very striking statement, and perhaps precisely over that statement, we've seen what the disruptions have been doing to the market, and I would say to the fluidity of the market, because you almost compared critical minerals to a global public good, like oxygen, right, or to a global common. You still need to extract it, to transform it, and to trade. So what I'd like to focus on before we get to a larger discussion with the room, perhaps, is about the precisely these market disruptions that risk getting to that suboptimal situation that I was mentioning before. So, Aggie, let me turn to you again. What do you think? So what's the sort of the state of play in terms of these barriers and restrictions, and what are the risks that they pose to the overall supply of critical minerals?
So I think, just to delve into a little bit the naming of critical minerals, and you raised this at the beginning, this transitional minerals. I mean, the expression itself is not neutral. Historically, by critical minerals, we often refer to those that are essential to national security, that are essential to economic security. So, that is kind of the core of the issue, because when there is a tension here between the joint global objectives of decarbonization and this aspect of national self-interest and profit. So, as the minister said, to resolve that tension, it's really we need to look at it as where is the common ground and where is the shared interest. So the concern in that common ground and shared interest is that the developing countries who are on the producing side or the extraction side of these minerals, they really experience an unjust distribution of the risk and benefits. So the question is, when we're talking about working together on these issues, how to move towards a value generation that benefits this common good per se, and not necessarily just looking at instructions and productions, but processing and manufacturing, and how these contradictory interests play out when we're trying to put that value generation at the countries that are hosts of these minerals. So, when we go back to what we can do to address these tensions and how to look at it and what are the effects of it. I mean, first of all, there is a direct relationships with conflict. So, in our discussions, when we're connecting all these dots, and for us, the challenge, for everybody, the challenge is that it's such a complex picture. It's really a system that fits together. It's not just about the industry. It's not just about the supply chains. It's about conflict. It's about social tensions. It's about human rights. It's about the environment. But especially like when we look at the issues that could be generated by it, for example, the threat to peace or conflict. We heard the mention of standards. So it's extremely important to look at the role of the environment, which means the regulations, the standards, the governance that's missing. But it's also very important to look at the actors. Who are these multi-stakeholder actors that are involved in this other than governments? And the private sector plays an unbelievably important role. So often in our discussions as development actors and international organizational multilateral discussions, now more and more there is this push that the private sector needs to be there to resolve, prevent conflict and build, do peace building and ensure that this is all built into their practices. But when these companies are there, they are there to do business. And they work together with governments, they work together with communities, but they are not necessarily know how to comply with these standards, which standards, and do they have the capacity to do that? Do they know what it means, a conflict-sensitive approach in a situation where actually extracting minerals leads to not necessarily wars at a large scale, but even just community conflicts? So I think where we have to play a very important role as more the neutral players in these pictures, like UNDP or other UN organizations, intergovernmental organizations, is really to help build capacities so the actors can comply with these standards, that we are clear on the guidelines, what it means to be conflict sensitive, what it means to be applying to the environmental safeguards. And there are tools out there. There are very well-proven approaches such as the enhanced guidelines that we have on conflict-sensitive approaches of private sector, especially in the areas of minerals. So we really need to look at how we bringing together the tools, regulations, the existing pieces of local or regional governance mechanisms in lieu of a robust governance mechanism, and how do we actually help these players to play their role in a way that benefits what they are there for, but also creates this common ground and common public goods, which then feeds the system that is actually looking for these minerals in the first place for a particular reason.
Thank you. So on standards and norms, let me get back to Mr. Sun, because you also mentioned the importance of these standards. Could you tell us what type of standards you are applying, using, or pushing among all the industries and mining companies that are affiliated to CCCMC, and if you have ESG criteria, and if you think we have a sufficiently good set of standards and norms when it comes to critical minerals?
对，实际上，刚才我也
Thank
介
you
绍
very。much for the question. Just now I have mentioned the standards related, the internationally influential standards which are related to the mineral supply chain or the mining sector. There are 28 of them. Some may focus on one product, but some focus on several products. So many investors and the enterprises on the supply chain feel a little bit confused. They don't know which standard they should use. And some enterprise may cover several minerals in their supply chain. They are subject to several audits or assessment according to different standards. So that is why I suggest the consistency and mutual recognition of standards, especially the audit results, mutual recognition, so that we could streamline the assessment and audits of the enterprises. In recent years, there are many different concepts, ESG, CSR, RBC, BHR, and SDG, etc. Actually, all these concepts confused even the industry experts, not to mention enterprises. They don't know what are the relationships among different concepts, because we know all these standards are to regulate the enterprise's behaviors in order to prevent direct or indirect environmental and social negative impacts. But some ESG is already toolized or politicalized, especially in the human rights issue. And so, actually, in this way, the international investment and trade are negatively influenced. Some countries are adopting the resource-based foreign policy, and I think all these things twisted the market economy, and some legislations are published for the global south, and some standards exclude the SMEs. Some enterprises try to de-risk the supply chain, which negatively influence the vulnerable groups' livelihood. I would say standards themselves are good, but how to implement the responsible investment and responsible operation is a problem in order to avoid any other negative impacts. So I would say standards are good. I want to emphasize it, but we need more cooperation in order to use all these standards in an appropriate manner. We developed a lot of standards, for example, the guidelines for the outbound investment of mining companies, and also we worked with OECD And in the guidelines for the due diligence in the mineral supply chain, and so we help the enterprises to identify the mineral risks in some high-risk countries and regions. We help the enterprises to use the standards. And also we work with many international platforms, just like the Paris Peace Forum. We want to further expand our international cooperation so that we could accelerate these solutions.
Thank you. Thank you. Minister Amon, let me turn back to you quickly. You described Zimbabwe as a sort of geological scandal with the incredible concentration of minerals. So can you tell us what are the precise effects of being at the center of this race and this competition? And did the decision of banning raw lithium export work? How did it play out? Could you give us a more political feel of how things went?
Yeah, basically the issue is about whether it's fair to export raw ore, or it has to be value added. We believe that it had to be value added because we have plenty of lithium and it can't be transported out of the country and have less value from it. So we basically, our philosophy is that fair trade is the basis for peace. It can happen when countries respect each other's possessions. Those with knowledge share the knowledge, and those with critical minerals should be compensated fairly. So simple. The development of our markets basically assumes shared prosperity, and we believe that if Zimbabwe or any other country has to become a market, the people have to be prosperous as well, so that the market economy that we are trying to develop for the world is fair for everyone. And although we know that resources are not, they become, it means they become because of knowledge in science and technology. It therefore means that that shared knowledge should be there so that minerals are developed for the good of the world, but Zimbabwe and other countries that are the source of these minerals also benefit. So basically, we have to transform the international trade. I think a new blue ocean strategy is needed, which is based on trade, not might. And that the might is in trade and knowledge sharing, and the old method has been of unfair competition based on deceit and plunder. But we believe that at this moment, it must be based on shared knowledge and not a disaggregated world that is at each other's throats. We believe we can use mineral differentiation as a basis of peace and trade, not as a basis of cutting each other's throats.
Thank you. Another aspect of that is the market restrictions and obviously protectionism. Chairman Miyanaga, what is your assessment of the state of play in terms of protectionism and market restriction, and how much does that affect the production of minerals?
Yes, for the short and medium term, I think the protectionism and such kind of the fragmentation will influence or affect very much. But I think in the long run, especially in this kind of critical minerals issues, there are a lot of interdependency. Not only the interdependency of the mining part, and the processing, smelting part, and the waste treatment, and finishing the products, and the trading, the usage, and all such kind of the complicated interdependencies. And also there is another factor of some alternative minerals. And so if there is such kind of the barriers and disturbances, we may resort the secondary optimal solutions, and third, and so on. But by doing so, the overall optimization is deteriorated, and I think the world, all over the world, the whole world, will lose some efficiency, the optimum and efficiency if we, get rid of those kind of the barriers and so on. So always we need to think about whether if we do not have this kind of barriers and how better the world will become and how better and how well we can, evaluate and fairly the value of the mining part and processing part. I think there is no country which can establish the true vertical supply chain from mining to the utilization. And of course, there are 90% or 80% for some areas, but the critical minerals are there are many critical minerals. There are a lot of, some of the alternative complementary usage, and so I think probably in the long run, I hope and I believe that the world will find the solution. But we should not ignore the loss, the huge loss in the transition period. And we need to, the critical minerals is a very peculiar part. The location is concentrated, and the technology, smelting technologies and the utilization technologies, and the trading optimization, all such kind of knowledge and information is owned by several parties. So we need to share. That is my feeling.
That is a great transition to my conclusion. I have been a very bad moderator because we're supposed to have the possibility of having a Q&A, and I mismanaged the sequence, and we're now at the end of this session. So let me conclude and apologize at the same time on that by telling you what we are doing at the forum. So what we did a year ago was launch that call to action at the 5th edition, where we identified the major challenges that we mentioned during this session, and established the basis for a multi-actor initiative, bringing together representatives from the private sector, from the public sector, from international organizations, from professional organizations, from NGOs, etc. And we are now working on establishing a high-level group which will be called the Global Council for Responsible Transition Minerals, and which ambition will be to represent the global interest, as I laid out in the introduction, in the context of heightened state rivalry, and to foster international cooperation towards a sufficient supply of responsibly sourced minerals for the green transition in order to make it possible. So in the next few weeks, we'll be working on establishing this council, so stay tuned. We have improved the website of the Paris Peace Forum. You know that the forum is not just an annual event of today and tomorrow, it's also a year-round work on a number of initiatives. So let me finish by saying how much I want to thank my co-panelists here, whether in Beijing, thank you, Mr. Sun, or here, thank you, Minister. Thank you, Agis. Thank you, Chairman Miyanaga. I think it was very enlightening. Sorry again for zapping the Q&A session, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.